we are all being a little short-sighted right now. What I mean by short-sighted is I think a lot of us are thinking, oh yeah, well, in the future, it's just going to be the Power Two. It's just going to be two big conferences. And I think that is extremely short-sighted and completely disregards any and everything we have seen so far in college football. I think more realistically, we're headed for a Power One situation. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football back at it again. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things college football, pro football, Madden, EA college football, anything related to American football, also the draft, hit that red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Also hit the like button too. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So I didn't post yesterday, and we have a very, very somber issue to talk about today. I want to make sure I can bring something up because there was a tweet that I saw, and I know you've all seen it by now, but I just want to make sure it was brought to light that our dear friend, Golden Blue Dude has passed on. This right here is a tweet from Joseph Foster, my boy, Dr. Joseph Foster. I will not go into detail at this time, but Blue Dude has passed away last night. A video will follow on his YouTube channel in the hours for the family. Please show them respect. We will go live at some point tomorrow. And his brother actually went online and was able to make a post. It was very, very heartfelt, and it ended with a country road. So it was one of those things that it's terrible to see him go, but you know, it was the nostalgia that came up from that. I want to make sure we're clear about something, okay? My boy, Golden Blue Dude, he's helpful to this channel. He invited me. His channel's way bigger than mine. He invited me to be on his show. I really love everything that he did, man. And unfortunately, he has been taken from us too early. And in that tweet right there, and I'll make sure I include this link right here to his GoFundMe here. It's for Golden Blue Dude, Chris Petrie. So you'll see here, they have reached their $15,000 goal, but I'm letting you know right now, the family, multiple children just lost their father. His fiance lost her fiance. So it's just a terrible situation. Give as much money as you can. Help them out because they need it. Help out the person who has helped us out through so much of the monotonous days of college football, no news and here and there. He's done such a great job with everything. You know, hopefully he rests in peace, man, because he did a lot of work in this environment, and he really did a great job. I'm going to do something a little bit different in this video. So there's something that Golden Blue Dude does, and he's really, 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 really good at. And he would go into something called the speculation zone. Basically what he would do, he would talk about some rumors here and there and kind of divert himself to talk about a tangent situation that could potentially happen. I want to do that too because I think that there's something that's been heading this way for college football for some time here. We're starting to see a separation between the haves and the have-nots, the programs that make money, the programs that don't. There's lots of situations like that I really like to talk about. And I think that we are all being a little short-sighted right now. What I mean by short-sighted is I think a lot of us are thinking, oh yeah, well, in the future, it's just going to be the Power Two. It's just going to be two big conferences. And I think that is extremely short-sighted and completely disregards any and everything we have seen so far in college football. I think more realistically, we're headed for a Power One situation. So again, here we are in the speculation zone. I'm telling you, Power One, not Power Two. We're going to go over a couple of assumptions here. We're going to go over my criteria, and then we're going to go over the members, and then the organization, how it's going to ultimately look. So my assumptions here, and again, this is about the dumbest assumption because we all know it's true, but money will continue to drive everything because that's what drives basically everything in all the worlds, in every world of all the worlds. Basically, what's happening right now is that money rules the roost, and as much as people try and say, oh, I wish that money wasn't driving everything, it drives everything. It drives nonprofit organizations. It drives profit organizations. It drives your friends. It drives your relatives. It drives just about everything that you do. That is the reason why conference realignment is going through, is because of money. And again, money will overpower any sense of tradition, distance between teams, access to airports, rivalries, all the ancillary stuff. It will overpower everything like that. So as much as you go, oh, well, they got to include them. They have the rivalry. I got to include them. They got the contract with the ESPN. We're assuming here all that breaks and they can completely start from scratch. This is what I think will happen here in this situation. And ultimately, I think it will happen. It just, the time horizon could be 20 years, could be 150. I think ultimately it will lead to something like this. Another thing here is that regionality will still be important for eyeballs and national interest. I know what I just said. I just said that it will overpower distance between teams. However, the value of having a regionality aspect to the conference will be extremely important going forward. They don't want to make sure it's just the Southeastern Conference. I actually think that limits the reach of the conference. I think that limits the reach of the conference based on the regionality. So be more inclusive with the language. I know inclusive. But anyways, I think that will be ultimately something that will happen there. I also think here this is important. I do not think NIL will destroy college football. I think a lot of people think it will. However, there's multiple situations where that will completely be destroyed. Until double-digit amounts of 4 to 5-star players accept money to ride the bench for multiple years, I probably should have added that for multiple years, then playing will overcome NIL opportunities in a vacuum for most players. Basically what that means right there is that if a player has an opportunity to go to Alabama, ride the bench for 3 years, and then maybe play for 2, and the whole time get $750K, 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 or he could get $70K and go to Oklahoma State and play 4 years and go to the NFL. I bet option 2, I know it technically, game theoretical wouldn't be the whole, wouldn't be the smartest thing move there, but I don't think that's going to be a situation there. I think ultimately at the end of the day, unless we're going to see multiple 4 and 5-star players go to a team, stay at the team, aka Texas A&M, sorry, not sorry, a lot of you guys just left after that amazing recruiting class you got. Until that moment happens, it won't. Then NIL will not destroy college football. Again, the problem with NIL is that NIL is basically what happened anyway. We just didn't see it out loud. Why do you think all those programs were so good? Do you think people want to go live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama? No offense, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But I'm basically saying there's a reason why those teams are so strong. I'm just saying it's been going on for a while. I also bring that up to make sure that we're clear about this. I think that more than likely, if this situation were to come to fruition, it would create a second level conference just below it. There'd be a Power 1, there'd be a semi-Power 2, there'd be a lesser Power 3, there'd be a lesser Power 4, and so on down the line. That's what I ultimately think is going to happen here. We used to have it with regionality with these conferences, but regionality is important, especially at the top. But it gets more and more important, I think, when it gets a little closer and closer to the bottom because the discrepancy of dollars is so much more. But at the top here, there's so much money that the only reason why you want regionality is just to make sure you can increase the national relevance of the league. And then also at the last point here, 16 teams is not, I repeat, not going to be the size limit of the Power 1 because there's so many more things you can do. We're going to go into a couple of those situations just a little bit later on. All right, the criteria here is the criteria for anything, okay? The most important resource right now, a lot of people think, oh, it's this, it's that, blah, blah, blah. The most important resource right now, especially in this interconnected age that we have, is eyeballs. The most important thing is to draw a ton of eyeballs. Okay, that's the most important thing here. You do that mostly from tradition and alumni and blah, blah, blah. You mostly do that from just being really good at football or really, really care about football. And again, that's important. You're going to see there's a reason why there's an overabundance of SEC teams in here is because the SEC, it is more important. Have a national footprint. And again, it's important to make sure that people across the country at least have a reason to check in. I'll say this. Most people across the country have a reason to check in. You do not want to be completely isolated from some regions unless those regions are really, really unpopulous. That will be a situation that we'll go over here. And then also have solid educational institutions. And again, will not be nearly as big of an issue once you get to the higher rungs of college football. And again, that's because those higher rungs of college football, they just have so much more resources in every aspect to be able to spend on sports and here and there. So there will be some schools in here you'll be like, that school's not very good. They would never organize with them. They would never organize with them. For the most part, you are right. However, when the money gets right up here, again, you're going to see most of these universities are in the top 150. They're solid places to go to school. A couple of them are in like the top 10, top 20. But for the most part, that is the situation here. Again, this whole situation would satisfy the ADs, it would satisfy the presidents, and it would satisfy our dear friends at the media partners. It would satisfy all of them. So who are those member institutions? Let's get into that right now. All right, if we're pulling from the SEC, and again, I'm going to pull 8. I could have pulled 11. Auburn was close. South Carolina was close. Arkansas was close. Those schools care a lot more about sports than you would think they do. They're good institutions in here and there. But ultimately, Alabama and Tennessee are being pulled over. Florida and Georgia are being pulled over. Oklahoma and Texas are being brought over. And LSU and Texas A&M. I just paired them like that. LSU and Texas A&M is kind of a weird pairing. But you know what I'm trying to say there is that both of those are really big institutions, really good. I mean, how many national championships are in that group right there? We think about Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Texas back with Vince Young, Oklahoma. There are so many national championships in that group right there. This group is an easy sell to be added in. Like I said, Auburn, South Carolina, Arkansas are close, but we wanted to make sure we had some regionality and still solid institutions, so they were just left outside. If we're pulling from the Big Ten now, here's where it gets interesting, man. So Michigan, Ohio State, obviously for sure, those are the top two brands. Ohio State is one of the most valuable brands in college football, bar none. I mean, every single list has Ohio State 1, 2, or 3, and if not, it's wrong. Michigan's up there too. Maryland and Penn State. Maryland, and again, I know people say, "Oh, Maryland, why the hell would Maryland be?" Maryland's a lot more valuable than you think they are. At the DC element, connected to New York, not necessarily connected to New York. I mean, Rutgers was, but like the fact is, Maryland, solid institution, would pair up with Penn State just fine. And Wisconsin and Nebraska, those Midwest partners out there, Wisconsin's a lot bigger than people give it credit for. And then USC and UCLA, I don't have to explain that one. That one's pretty easy. Almost made the cut. Michigan State and Iowa. Iowa's a lot bigger than people give credit for. Michigan State's a lot bigger than people give credit towards too. But I think those 8 right there, that's what I would pull if I was setting up my super league. Up next, we have the ACC. And again, like I said, this is going to happen multiple years from now. But Florida State and Miami, I like both those schools. Virginia and Clemson. Clemson is not the greatest school in the world. It's not a bad school, but it's not on the level of like a North Carolina or a Virginia. And then, those schools right there, that's how that would go. So Virginia, North Carolina, Miami, Florida State, Clemson. So you've got South Carolina, North Carolina, you've got the state of Virginia, and then you've got Florida. And then you also have here no one else really made the cut. Georgia Tech was close. Georgia Tech really is not good at sports. Pitt is a little bit better. Pitt's a reasonable institution, AAU institution, but just I didn't ultimately go with that. I think Penn State owns the state of Pennsylvania. I know if that's going to start those two between each other, but I don't really care. That's my opinion there. I will pull these 5 from the ACC. And then the other members, so a couple from the Pac-12, one from the Independents, and so on. So we'll see here, Washington and Stanford. So again, Cal, I was close to putting Cal there, but I wanted to add Stanford for Notre Dame, just for that sake, give that rivalry, blah, blah, blah. I know that rivalries don't really matter, but Stanford is an extremely important institution. A lot of those ADs and a lot of those presidents would want Stanford in there. Washington for some regionality out there for the Northwest. And then we have Notre Dame. Notre Dame speaks for itself. Notre Dame is one of the most popular teams in the state, or in the city of New York, which is, kind of shocking there. But we also talk about who almost made the cut here. Cal, Oregon, Utah. I actually think BYU might be more popular than Utah, but again, they were ultimately left out. And Kansas. Remember here, Kansas was the only one that wanted to get out of the 8 remaining members from the Big 12. They wanted to go to the Big 10. They wanted to go over here. They almost talked about going to the Pac-12 when that was USC and UCLA were still in there. So Kansas is a valuable asset. Utah and BYU, Cal, and Oregon are as well. They did not make the cut. I went with Washington, Stanford, and Notre Dame. So what does the organization actually look like? So we're sitting at 24 teams. This is what like I said, I have control of everything. 24 teams. There's 2 different organization types here. I actually feel like type 2 is more favored for me if I'm trying to make more money. So we're talking about this organization type 1. 9-game conference schedule plus conference championship. Each school will have 2 guaranteed rivalries plus 7 rotating games between the remaining 21 teams. Play each school every 3 years and play everywhere every 6. I like 16 right now because it gives you the ability to play 3 schools every year and then the remaining 6 everybody every 2, everywhere every 4. It's a really, really nice situation there. However, if I'm trying to make money, those top level games make more than the mid and bottom level games of the other conferences here. Let's go to organization type 2. So we have an 8-game conference schedule plus a conference semifinal and a conference championship. Conference semifinal? No way, that's unprecedented. Well, remember here, we're talking Power 1. We do what we want. We want the most amount of money possible. I think that this group, this 2014 group, you could see as many as 2, maybe even 3 undefeated teams in this group here. I think it would be surprising, but it might be a situation there. We go through this here. Each school will have 5 guaranteed rivals. This also helps out with some of the regionality. The West Coast teams can play some more West Coast teams. The South teams can play more South. The East Coast can play more East. And then the Midwest can play more of the Midwest teams. So you can have more of those guaranteed rivals that you play every single year. Each school will have 5 guaranteed rivals plus 3 rotating games between the remaining 18 teams. So that would limit some of your super cross distance, games and stuff like that. Although at the same time, if these teams all organize with each other, 24 teams, money's not going to be an issue, and we'll get into that here in a sec. You would play every school every 6 years and everywhere every 12 years. And again, that would hurt some of the situations with selling the fact that Washington and Clemson and USC and Wisconsin are all in the same conference here. However, what it would do is it would just create one of the coolest. This would basically just be the national championship every single year. What the organization would have would be 13 AAU institutions, very important for those ADs and those presidents. One former AAU member, Nebraska, and multiple approaching, Miami and Florida State. Miami and Florida State are the only ones that I could confirm are approaching. Others might be, but I know they are approaching that. Regions and states with a team in them. You got the West Coast, California, and I put Oregon, but I should have put Washington there. We got the South, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, and North Carolina. The East Coast, Virginia could technically be in the South. So we got Virginia and Maryland. And then the Midwest, we have Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin. The regions missing are the Northern Great Plains, basically North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, those schools there. And the Mountain West, not the conference, but more so the, like the Mountain West-ish region, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Those schools wouldn't really be in there. And then also New England, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, those schools would not be in there as well. But for the most part, if we look at the the states that are included, California, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Virginia, North Carolina, those are super populous states. There would be tons and tons and tons of fans paying attention to this. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the money the conference would generate would basically just pick a number. It's just pick a really, 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 really high number. To honor my late great friend, Mr. Golden Blue Dude, like I said, we're entering the speculation zone there. So that's the situation. I don't think we're heading for a Power 2 situation. I think we're heading for a Power 1 situation. I think at the end of the day, if money drives everything, okay, so who cares about, no offense to Purdue and Indiana. No offense to, South Carolina and Kentucky. No offense to Missouri and Minnesota. They're not going to be included if the Big Ten and the SEC continue on. I think that the Big Ten and the SEC, they would take 8 and 8, and they would take a couple from the other people. They'd take Washington. There'd be an addition of Notre Dame. There'd be a lot of schools like that. 24 schools, okay? Potentially with a conference semifinal championship, it would be the most watched thing. I'm telling you right now, how many national champions were in that group? It is absolutely shocking. But like I said, Power 1 is coming if the current rules of conference realignment, the current rules are there are no rules and money rules everything. And if that's true, we're not headed for a Power 2. We're headed for a merger with the top of the Big Ten, the top of the SEC, and the top of the remaining schools. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please remember here, go and donate to Golden Blue Dude and his family. He is no longer with us. His family still needs it. They've met their limit. However, at the same time, you can never have enough money when you lose your father, you lose your husband, you lose your fiance, stuff like that. So make sure you go and donate there and leave a comment here. Let me know your favorite thing about Golden Blue Dude. I really appreciate everything he's done. I hope we can celebrate as much as we can. But thank you so much for being here. Please remember, like, share, comment, subscribe, and go donate to Golden Blue Dude. I'll see you guys later. I am out.